And so you have this sort of status competition, these coalitional dynamics that emerge in adolescence and early adulthood. And so people have to be sort of much more socially vigilant of, is this person on my side or not? Do I have to worry about this person? Being more suspicious of other people's motives. And so, that being said, and then I think sort of the clinical perspective is there can be points where this can be lead into sort of unhealthy and damaging behaviors.
Welcome to the Open Therapy Podcast, the podcast of the Open Therapy Institute. I am Megan Daum, the moderator, with two giants of psychology, Rob Henderson, Andrew Hartz. Nice to see you guys.
Thanks, Megan.
What's on the docket today? What are we going to talk about?
Well, we got from this book.
Yeah, you guys. We should say this is the book club. This is the private book club of Rob and Andrew. And
that is pretty much how this started.
Well, that is what the podcast is. So
I mean, that's essentially.
What did you guys read this week?
Yeah, and this is a classic psychoanalytic textbook. Every psychologist that works from this perspective reads this book. But we're kind of skipping around. We thought there was a lot of conspiracy theory stuff in the news, and so we decided to read about paranoid personalities and see if that shed light on current events.
That is a great topic, because is it a fine line between paranoia and vigilance, or even just being in reality about the dangers of the world?
Well, so I will say I'm not coming at this from a clinical perspective, but I did read quite a bit about paranoia, but more from a kind of social evolutionary perspective when I was doing my graduate studies. And essentially, so paranoia, and I guess this is true for so many other features of the human mind. It exists on a continuum. It's not, you're a paranoid personality and you're normal. It's, we all sort of exist on degrees on this continuum of how paranoid we are. And, we all have a bit of it in us. But one of the things I remember reading about is that paranoia, there's the developmental trajectory of paranoia. You can see it emerge in adolescence. You don't meet super paranoid 6-year-olds. And you don't really meet, little kids, they're very kind of concrete in that, if they suspect one of the other kids has something more than them, but they don't have these elaborate.
It's not tapping their phone.
Right, exactly. Okay. Or they don't think that all of the teachers in the school are conspiring against me or something. And so it seems to emerge in adolescence and peaks in early adulthood. And this is true for everyone, regardless of whether you sort of have healthy levels or unhealthy levels of paranoia, that emerges in adolescence, peaks in early adulthood, and then gradually declines in our sort of late 20s, early 30s. And the hypothesized evolutionary explanation is that adolescence is when peer interaction increases. This is when people become much more sort of focused on coalition, building friends, building alliances, but also, of course, attracting romantic partners. And so there's this whole sort of social competition element. Bullying kind of increases during this time. And so you have this sort of status competition, these coalitional dynamics that emerge in adolescence and early adulthood. And so people have to be sort of much more socially vigilant of, is this person on my side or not? Do I have to worry about this person? Being more suspicious of other people's motives. And so, that being said, and then I think sort of the clinical perspective is there can be points where this can be lead into sort of unhealthy and damaging behaviors.
That's really interesting. I thought when you were starting, you were going to say that the kids didn't have it because they don't have theory of mind or something like that. They don't. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably, those can be intertwined. I think an evolutionary perspective would say the reason why we start to develop theory of mind is for those sort of social and romantic reasons. But I remember another very neat study that the researcher Nicola Raihani came to our department to deliver this talk at Cambridge, and she shared some really interesting research. I might have told you about this, Andrew, before, about this. They essentially wanted to see if there was a relationship between social status and paranoia. And she found this very interesting kind of U-shaped curve where people, this is socioeconomic status, that people at the very bottom end of SES report high levels of paranoia. And then as you reach the sort of middling categories of SES, it drops. And then for people who are high in socioeconomic status, paranoia rises again. So this is something that shifts. Yeah, that very poor and very rich people sort of have these elevated levels of paranoia.
And what was the reason for why? Was there an explanation for why?
Yeah, I mean, the research, this is kind of, well, this was 2019 or early 2020 when I saw this presented. At that point, I remember the speculated reasons for low-end people. You just have to be much more vigilant and aware when you have low resources. You just have to be much more careful with who you're interacting with and be more wary of being potentially exploited when you don't have very much to begin with. And then at the high end, there was, possibility of maybe loss aversion, of there's nowhere to go but down, so you have to be careful about who you interact with. And then also the possibility maybe that, and this is sort of my kind of half-baked interpretation, is maybe elevated levels of paranoia are good in terms of climbing the ladder. You're much more sort of scrutinizing of who you're interacting with and who you ally yourself with, and that can be beneficial as you sort of climb up the ladder. But then maybe at a certain point it can backfire.
Oh, that's really interesting.
I mean, it would make perfect sense. If you're wealthy, people want something from you. I mean, you're going to be even worried about your child being kidnapped. I mean, if you are very, very wealthy,
held for ransom.
Yeah, I mean, that's not that's not an irrational concern necessarily if you're super rich. Right. So, yeah.
That's interesting. Well, I mean, at least in the psychoanalytic sense, this is like, I think maybe this was a weird feature, how the chapter starts in some ways is like, you can have the same belief and it be paranoid or not paranoid, depending on what's motivating it. So it's like, if you think, you can think people are out to get you and just be wrong. But it's like, what's motivating it? If it's motivated by some type of drive or emotion, or it's a defense against something else, that's what makes it paranoid, as opposed to this. So people kind of, if you look at things in the news, for example, about Epstein is the big one in the news right now. But like, I wouldn't say everyone who is really into that story has a paranoid character style. Like, I think that's like probably like too much, but there's certain people where this story is really meeting some emotional need for them, and that would kind of make it indicative of them being paranoid. Maybe that's kind of like a little bit of a get out of jail free card.
Well, I mean, what are the sort of characteristics of a conspiracy-minded person? I mean, the sort of like all the dots connect somehow.
Yeah,
that's not necessarily paranoia.
It's not, but there was like one of the things that I learned when I was like doing like testing, like I did like a lot of what like IQ testing is a big part of your training as a clinical psychologist, and they would the people with paranoia were thought to be really good at this IQ task that's called similarities. And it's like, I'll tell you like, how are these two things similar? And it's like 5 and 7. Like, how are 5 and 7 similar? Well, they're both numbers, so that's the, and then I'd say, well, how is how is inside and outside? How are inside and outside? What do they have in common? And it's kind of like, so they get harder. It's kind of like, well, they're kind of like areas, or like relative to, like, so it gets trickier, like with hold and allow. And it gets, so you kind of, but people with paranoia tend to be much better at this. So their like cognitive strengths fit the defenses that they're attracted to using. So like you would almost like you'd do the personality assessment, you'd see some paranoia over there, and then you'd look at their IQ test, and they were really good at similarities, and that would be another indication that this is somebody who has a paranoid disposition. If they can connect the dots.
Well, okay, I know we're going to stick to, you know, to stick to the reading and stick to the topic, but how are you guys feeling about the Epstein discourse and the fact that large number of people seem to think that there could be widespread child trafficking rings and even like drinking the blood of children, like you know, it's the ripple effect is formidable.
Well, I think it's probably important to keep in mind that Epstein was charged with, what was it, some trafficking, like human trafficking, and then for individuals under 18, but the youngest person was 16. So, you know, and then there's this whole online discourse of, you know, Epstein and his compatriots were, you know, raping and murdering children. And that's, you know, there's no evidence for any of that. And, you know, there is evidence that he was involved with 16-year-olds. But then the online discourse becomes, well, is that, you know, is that a pedophile or not if you're attracted to 16-year-olds? And so, you know, very clearly he wasn't a good guy. But then, you know, these elaborate, morbid stories that people are concocting. I mean, what he did was bad enough. Like, why do you have to add, you know, drinking the blood and murder and ritualistic satanic practices and all this stuff? It's just, it gets very weird.
So it's a great, I mean, it's like, that's a great, like, Rorschach test is like when you have like lots of really emotionally charged information that is really ambiguous and insinuating. And what do people do with that? And there's going to be a certain type of person that's going to be like, nothing going on, I'm not middle-do, and there's going to be that person, and then there's going to be the person that's like, demons are everywhere. Right. And that's like, what's interesting about the Rorschach, the number of people who are capable of like sitting with ambiguity and being like, there's a lot that's really potentially concerning, but there's not a lot solid here, and we don't know. That is so hard for people to do.
That's us. Okay. So what is the kind of personality that can do that? Because that's what a lot of us are trying to be, as you know, in this sort of independent media space. Are we just, is this a pathology?
I actually think we're like, statistically speaking, we're probably the weird ones.
That's what I know.
That most people, I think, are, you know, very easily swept up in moral panics, and, you know, it takes an unusually, you know, kind of level-headed person to carefully sift through the evidence. You know, people want to, if something aligns with people's sort of pre-existing beliefs and it's something that they want to believe. That's the thing that I'm confused about, is like, why do they want to believe this? Some things, you know, if they align with your interests, then I can understand why you might be willing to overlook certain facts. But for this, it has nothing to do with any individual person. You know, whether Epstein was as bad as the worst sort of fantasies you see online or not, that has no bearing on any individual person. Except maybe, I mean, there is this like this whole thing about what is it? Like very outward expressions of moral condemnation do serve to make the person look better. And so, you know, there's a kind of interesting studies here where if people learn of someone who very publicly and ostentatiously condemns another person for moral wrongdoing, then witnesses will subsequently view that person as more moral. Because only someone so moral would be so vehemently pointing this out about someone else, and so, you know, maybe on some level these people would say, oh, look how bad Epstein and his friends were. Well, they're kind of subcommunicating. I would never do that. I'm such a good person. Look how much I'm condemning them.
That makes me think they are doing that very thing, though. Does that make me paranoid? When I see somebody going way overboard condemning somebody for something, I think you are doing that. You know, it's always like the people who are like seeing racism everywhere that were kind of racist, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, is
Wait, wait.
that instinct indicative of paranoid personality?
Well, so there was a passage in the McWilliams reading, and I'd love to get Andrew's take on this. So McWilliams, she writes, when a paranoid husband, oblivious to his own normal fantasies of infidelity, becomes convinced his wife is dangerously attracted to other men, frequently involved in this kind of jealousy is an unconscious yearning for closeness with a person of the same sex. So, he has these fantasies that his wife is sleeping with other men. Maybe he gets a little aroused by it, but really this may be like beneath that is really his own desire for closeness with men.
That was throughout the chapter, and that's definitely a big part of like psychoanalytic literature, is that there are these like a lot of paranoia is men who think other men are gay or want to have sex. That's like that's a common manifestation, and I think my guess is it's gone down a lot since this was written, but it used to be something that I think people wrote about it a lot because they saw it a lot.
Yeah, I think it relates to what Megan is asking here, because it's like if someone is so vehemently, I would never do that, that's so bad, that's so awful, but really they're because they're trying to deter attention away from them, but really that's because they themselves might harbor those interests or fantasies or proclivities.
I mean, they're protesting too much. I mean, I guess the gay component. When was this book written? Actually, maybe we should introduce this book a little bit more before we go on.
It's called Psychoanalytic Diagnosis by Nancy McWilliams. And this was the second edition, although I think that the passages on paranoia about homosexuality predate that. And I don't know when the first edition was. This one was 2011. But it's published in 2011, so not so long ago. I don't think the first edition was so much earlier than that. I would guess probably like 10 years earlier or something.
Okay.
But,
I mean, because it would seem to me if somebody's obsessed with their, convinced that their spouse is cheating, it's more just like an unconscious, like they want to cheat. So they're seeing it, or like maybe they sort of unconsciously want the spouse to be cheating because it would give them an excuse to cheat. Like,
This seems characteristic throughout that chapter on paranoia, that so much of it is like projection and projective identification of they have these fantasies of other people conspiring and doing these bad things. But really, like they have these motives, and it's uncomfortable to acknowledge, so they sort of radiate it outward and suspect other people of having it.
I think I don't actually think that that's necessarily the most common form of paranoia. I think that one of the things that I walked away from the chapter with was being reminded that people who are paranoid are scared. That's just like obvious once you say it, but it's like they're so angry that that's all you see, and realizing like, no, they're scared, and they often feel powerless and lonely and have immense needs because they're often so isolated. So they really, really desire closeness and support. And the fact that you're paranoid means how often do you have relationships that you can trust? So that inability to have that supportive, especially with the family or whatever, a supportive relationship that you can trust is at play. Like needs for a trusting, supportive, loving relationship, and the deprivation and loneliness and fear behind that. And so there's all this need and distress. And I think that, but for whatever reason, they can't like acknowledge that directly. It's too painful to maybe acknowledge how lonely they are, or what their needs are, or what they feel humiliated about, or something like that. So they put it into a fantasy, a paranoid fantasy. So for the Epstein thing, it would be less like they want to commit pedophilia and that's why they're attacking Epstein. And it's more that they feel very sexually frustrated and excluded and maybe humiliated, and they feel like there's this intense unmet need and frustration and loneliness combined with like a lack of trusting relationships. That like, so the feeling is like is just being, but to acknowledge like feeling lonely and not wanted and not feeling loved and not feeling like that's like too painful. So you link it to this fantasy of Epstein.
Is paranoia specifically somebody's going to do something to me as opposed to something bad is going to happen? Like if somebody is afraid that there's going to be an earthquake all the time or something, or they're just like very afraid of of having a heart attack in their sleep or something. Is that different than somebody's going to come and get me?
That's interesting because Epstein's not going to come get you. Well, he's dead, or unless you believe there's a body double, and there's like a whole other layer of craziness.
Come get you.
But if you're if most people, Epstein's not going to come get you. But can you be paranoid about this? Yeah, it's an interesting, how can you be paranoid about something if it's not going to hurt you personally?
So there's I guess the lowest level of paranoia. I think there'd be degrees. The lowest is I think that person hates me or that person doesn't like me. And then it could be like they don't like me to they're out to get me to, and it can go all the way up to, aliens are going to come to destroy the earth. I think that's it can just keep upping in intensity from, the original, which is I think this person doesn't like me might be the mildest form of it.
Okay. But it's not like I am afraid that I left the stove on. And I'm paranoid I left the stove on and I got to run home.
Well, it could be, that's kind of an OCD thing.
Right.
But it could be related to an aggressive desire or something like that. It could be. But I think the tricky thing about the how it's defined is it all depends on if it has what's unconsciously motivating it determines whether or not it's paranoid. It's not the belief itself, which I think is kind of, but you could want to blow up your apartment or want to, do something like that or be afraid of your anger about something, and that gets displaced into accidentally blowing up your apartment or something.
Yeah. Do you guys think that you have any paranoia in you, either of you?
I had a very intense, I wouldn't say very intense. I think they're pretty common, but in grad school, I had paranoid fantasies about what the faculty in the program were thinking about me. I mean, you're in a psychoanalytic program, so you assume everybody's got a diagnosis of you. And
oh my God.
They have these meetings, and you'd kind of fantasize about what are they thinking about me in these meetings, and how do they have me pegged. And but it was I think a lot of the things that I was afraid, it was a very fruitful fantasy to think about, because the things I was afraid about they were going to judge me for were actually things that I worried were true about me. It wasn't I was worried about false things happening. It was I was worried about the true thing happening. And that's usually what happens in therapy. When people are paranoid about their therapist labeling them or judging them with something, it's usually because they're worried they actually have that, and it's just projected onto the therapist. But so I definitely had them then. Are there other I'm not sure that other paranoid super paranoid episodes are coming to me right now.
Rob.
Now I'm wondering if psychologists tend to be higher in paranoia because you're interested in human behavior and getting to the bottom of it and understanding it, and you probably need some elevated levels of paranoia if you want to understand people and their motives. I read some of this. So at the end of the McWilliams chapter, she gives some recommended readings. And I read skimmed a few pages of one of her recommendations, a chapter in a book called Neurotic Styles by Donald Shapiro. And in this book, he says, the paranoid person's picture of the world is interpretively autistic. his interest is in the world behind the apparent world, to which the apparent world only gives clues, hidden motives, underlying purposes, special meanings, and the like. And I have that, but from like, I guess it's expressed through studying psychology and help, and I guess if things go well, it'll aid me in understanding what's going on around me in the social world. But unlike Andrew, I was not in a clinical program, and so I wasn't necessarily worried about being diagnosed by the professors in my department. But as a PhD student, you are never completely certain whether you're doing the right thing or not. There's not a lot of structure or guidance. There's a little bit, but it's a lot more freedom than a kind of traditional bachelor's or master's program. It's very autonomous, research driven. And there's no one holding your hand throughout. So I kept wondering, like, am I being silently judged by everyone for slacking off or not dedicating my time in the right way? Does everyone think that I'm going to fail? That kind of thing. And if you've seen like some of the mental health statistics for PhD students, they're really bad. And I don't know if that's, if different disciplines have higher mental health issues than others, but generally PhD students report sort of high levels of anxiety, depression, all this stuff. And I think that's in part because maybe this fear of like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing and everyone's silently judging me as a loser.
Also, like, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing by even getting a PhD.
Well, there's that part too.
Right.
But the reality, probably, I don't know about your program, but the reality is actually they're not thinking about you at all. And that's, I think that's kind of why sometimes the paranoid fantasy is actually like weirdly gratifying, because it would, if they were judging you in all these elaborate ways, it would show that they're really attentive, they're super engaged, they know what's going on, they're thinking a lot about you, not you could like disappear for 3 months and nobody would notice, which was at a certain point working on my dissertation, I'm sure that could have happened. But like it's comforting to think like, oh, they have this really sophisticated psychological formulation of me that they're all thinking about, and they don't care. They didn't think, like, I don't think they were really thinking about me that much at all, frankly. So.
What's the relationship between paranoia and narcissism?
Well,
because you do have to have a certain amount of narcissism to think people are thinking about you all the time.
There is a kind of like stuff, but I think like going back to what Rob was saying about the continuum, these character styles are, what's useful to them as a therapist is they're basically clusters of certain traits that tend to go together. There's certain defenses and emotions and interpersonal dynamics and thought patterns that tend to cluster together. And so if I'm a therapist and I see some of them, I can keep my eye out for others, and that can help me be prepared or find things or make connections. But they don't actually tell you how to do the treatment, but they're just like, we see some of these clusters enough that it's useful to have them as schematics so that when you see some, you're like more likely to see some others. But they're not like, I think, the way people think about them as these kind of like reified concrete things that you either have or you don't. And if you have one thing, you have all of them, and everybody's kind of neatly categorized. They're not like that at all. So like, it's totally like a lot of narcissists could have total paranoia. A lot of paranoid people could be pretty narcissistic, and there can be overlap. And there's also some that don't have either of those. So it's like, I think there's like, they kind of like overlap oddly, just as like a.
I know that like there's like the cluster B conception of mental health or personality disorders, right? Like narcissism and psychopathy and bipolar. Is paranoia, that would be more sort of cluster A, is that right?
I think that was put
like
in cluster
sort of
A.
Schizotypal or something. I mean,
we should do a whole episode on the clusters, because first of all, the word cluster is like such a fabulous word. And then, but like, what are because we hear cluster B all the time when people are just like, oh, that person's a cluster B. Like,
well, I gotta say, I don't love character type, despite the fact that I think there's really useful. I don't love them because I think people get pigeonholed and they get stuck. Because as soon as you kind of label somebody as like narcissist, it breaks empathy and your ability to think like it's just a tool to help therapists grip on what's happening in some certain types of challenging situations. It's not really, but people make them too real, and I think it actually like blocks things. And I think the clusters also are kind of like, yeah, they're probably like, they're not very neat. They're just kind of like, they're like, paranoid could probably be on the border of cluster A and cluster B, and it's like,
Interesting.
whatever, I think. And they could create new, there used to be a depressive personality, there's no masochistic personality, there's no oppositional personality for adults, it's only in kids. So there's just like things that are just gone that are like, could easily be there. It's I think it's kind of slapdash, honestly, but they are full of like actual insights that have accumulated over time of therapists working with certain types of people, that you do see these connections and these associations enough that they're worth learning. But I just don't think, but I don't get so, I try not to get too like pinned down in them, because I would just think like, oh, you're a paranoid, therefore whatever.
Right.
You get stuck. It's like, why are you paranoid and what's driving it? Then you actually have something to work with. It's because you're lonely, or it's because you had, you were invalidated a lot and you couldn't trust your caregivers, or, it's something, there's something to work with there.
I remember reading this critique of, I guess, like the mental health profession by this British psychiatrist, Theodore Dalrymple. And it was a kind of a tongue-in-cheek line, but he said something like, so much of the mental health profession is, well, we know this person has a disorder because this person behaves this way, and this person behaves this way because they have this mental health disorder. And so there's this circular logic, and this doesn't actually help to solve anything. It's, okay, you have narcissism. How do we know you have narcissism? Because you're self-centered. Well, you're self-centered because you have narcissism.
Yeah, but the thing that grounds it is usually people go to treatment with a complaint and some type of, they should be establishing some type of shared goal in the first couple sessions of, this is why you're in therapy. It's really shocking to me how many therapists don't do that, to be honest, but you should have some type of shared goal. And the goal would be like, I am always having conflicts with people at work. That would be a goal that a paranoid person might come to, or my wife says I have to come here, so it's going to be something like that. That's why they come in, but it's because I'm fighting all the time. And why? Because and you start to get a sense of what so understanding that they're paranoid is really just going to help you in service of whatever the treatment goal is. But the treatment goals are like often really big deals. They're like, I keep getting fired. I can't keep a relationship. I'm like, I can't stop drinking. I can't, like, I'm too depressed to get out of bed. Like, they're real things. But we don't have like a nomenclature that matches that. They're like, it's looking at slightly different things. So
I wonder, so, we're talking about, and I think when we talk about personality styles, personality disorders, we talk about like the problems with elevated levels of paranoia or narcissism, or what have you. But can there be a danger to too little paranoia? Of, can you not be paranoid enough?
I was just going to say, are there uses for paranoia?
But you mean kind of like skeptical? Because I think like, you don't actually mean paranoia. You mean
keeping yourself safe.
You mean like being, you shouldn't be completely trusting of people. You should have some savvy to, it's not really like a fantasy.
Well, yeah, don't be a sucker kind of thing. Maybe.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of what I'm
like,
thinking.
Is this a scam? I mean, the thing is, for instance, we're constantly barraged with these like email that's a scam, or like the call, the AI call. And so, if you're not paranoid, you're going to waste a lot of time at the very least, and potentially really like get yourself in trouble. I don't know. There's reasons to be paranoid that are good.
I think what you're saying you want is accuracy. Like, you want an accurate level of, and some skepticism, but some like accurate assessment of people. Like, this is maybe like a slight tangent, but like I get this with empathy a lot. I think like a lot of what people ascribe to empathy is not actually accurate. So when you see somebody who's a psychopathic criminal and you say, oh, they're just doing that because they're sad or something, you're not actually, that's not actually empathy, because you don't have any insight in this person's
I think
psychology.
that's erasure, frankly.
It's
like not seeing them.
It's a type of denial, actually.
Yeah.
It's not empathy. And so I think it's like if people were really empathic, they'd probably be more afraid of a lot of criminals. Because
Right.
they'd see like, oh wow, it's way darker in there than I imagined. But yeah, I think it's like some skepticism, not being overly trusting.
Yeah, I guess, I'm asking is there a healthy level of paranoia where, if you could find, I'm sure some version of this study's probably already been done, where you just sort of track, like mapping, on that continuum, where do you stand in terms of paranoia, and does that correlate with likelihood of being exploited or victim of a crime, or being scammed, or even like sort of things like likelihood of being promoted or being hired, or like how well do you get along with your coworkers? Are you too trusting? So, a bit of vigilance when you're navigating the corporate hierarchy or something can be helpful. A bit of paranoia. Now I'm wondering, because you mentioned, Megan, the email scams. Usually those are older people. And I'd mentioned before the research on paranoia is I'm not accusing anyone of being a victim or targeting anyone of.
They've got keep going. They've gotten pretty sophisticated, I gotta say. So
I've blown away by how sophisticated these things. But
no, I've come close multiple times, but I guess I maybe I'm a paranoid person. But anytime I get anything from anyone, I'm just like I don't trust it. Like maybe I am a paranoid an example. But anytime I get anything online that looks a little fishy, but could be in my interest, my immediate response is like, I need to double and triple check this before I click anything or do anything. I mentioned before the developmental trajectory of paranoia, that it kind of starts to rise in adolescence and then peaks in young adulthood. I wonder if, because of that subsequent decline in the 30s, that older people are a bit more trusting, a bit less paranoid, and that could be, people blame technology. Oh, the boomers don't understand how email and the internet work. Maybe that's part of it, but I wonder if another part is like they're just more trusting as a result of, you get older and less suspicious of other people.
I got an email from the operations person at OTI with her name. It had her name in the email, saying like, oh, by the way, I just need the bank account information.
No
email
way.
Was fake. It was spam.
Yeah.
And it was like, I can't, like, that's crazy.
That's
but
scary.
It's actually like not a crazy thing that I could get an email from the operations person about a finance question. Like, that's totally typical.
Yeah, I just need your
it's
PIN
like
number.
I just have to read, like, so it just, but I
got a DM on Twitter from another psychologist friend of mine. I mean, he and I exchange like 3 DMs a year. It's like, check out this cool study, or like, you might like this. It's like that kind of relationship where like every 6 months we DM each other very briefly. And then like a month ago, he sent me this thing of like, hey, I'm up for like, I guess this was like end of December. Like, I'm up for Spotify podcast guest of the year, something. Would you mind voting for me? And there was a weird looking link. But I, like, it was his account, and I scrolled up and I'm like, okay, I see our chat history. This is him. And I also happen to have his email. So, and maybe this is the paranoia helping me. I emailed him and I screenshotted the thing and I said like, hey, is this you? I'm not going to click this. If you want my like vote, I'll give it to you. But like, you just need to tell me that this is legit. And then he's like, oh no, it looks like I was hacked. But like, as you said, like they're getting very sophisticated now with these things.
Yeah, I actually, I don't know. I was texting somebody. This is actually somebody we know. I'll just say, this is our mutual friend, Sally Settel, who, I think very highly of, and we were texting about something, and I said something like very complimentary, like just, I always really admire you or something or whatever. And I think I put her name in it. I was like, Sally, I just, I'm a big fan, and I just think everything you do is really great. And she goes, is this from you? Is this like real? Because it just like it's so unlike you to say a nice thing. No, there was something about the cadence of, and I was looking like, yeah, that does look a little like weird and stilted. But she thought it was like a bot.
There's definitely something in like in romantic relationships. Like I think like when can you trust this other person, and when do people actually like fall for somebody. And you kind of have to, if you're good all the time, there's like it's weirdly like hard to attach. Like you need them to kind of like make mistakes, but it like there's a certain type of character flaw that really like pulls. I think people are different in what they respond to.
It's a great seduction tool. Is that what you're saying? There's a character flaw that always
no. Everybody's different in terms of what character flaw they like, but it's like this person is like, they're a little bit rude or something, but you kind of feel like, oh well, I can trust that because they're honest, or this person is like disengaged, but you're like, okay, they're not going to be overly demanding. There's like a different, but you kind of need a flaw for whatever reason to trust.
I mean, it shows that they're human and that they mean what they say. If they say the same, if everything is good and perfect, that's like an AI.
Yeah, but like for you to like, but like you're looking for, it's a little bit of a, maybe this is, but it's like you're looking for the person who has that type of flaw that pulls you, like there's like a certain flaw that people like, and that you kind of need that.
What's the flaw you like? Do you know?
That's a really good question. I am so like, let's come back to this.
Okay, I have to think about it. I think there's probably many flaws that I like or will tolerate, because many. And
there's probably some that you absolutely can't stand.
Oh, for sure. Oh yeah. I mean, they're deal breakers.
And it's like, and it could be like the person's like very competent and like normal or something, and you're like, ugh.
Well, I mean, being rude to like, service people or something is completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
But that's not even that's like a character defect. That's not even a flaw.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah. But I want I think maybe like there was something on here about like how paranoid people are often attracted to politics. And I'm thinking about Rob's like coalition building and strategizing, and like honestly like seizing power is such a like, paranoia is kind of like a good personality trait for that. You can rationalize wiping out leadership and executing all of them and putting all your people in power and having absolute control. Like that's a very like paranoid thing to do.
Yeah, that's the Joseph Stalin school of politics of just
Robespierre.
Yeah, well, they would purge their own allies every so often, just in case any of them started to acquire too much power if they stayed in the hierarchy for too long. I saw that in the McWilliams reading of she used was it Dick Cheney as an example of this, and I guess this is very much sort of that era of like kind of the late 2000s, early 2010s, when that would be like a very sort of salient example for people. Yeah. Did either of you see the Dick Cheney movie with Christian Bale a few years ago?
No.
That's what I thought of, where there's like a couple of scenes. There's right after 9/11, and you see Dick Cheney, Christian Bale's the portrayal of Dick Cheney as like I want emails like anytime there's any threat, any credible anything, like, and then you see him getting phone calls like every 5 minutes, like, and then he just became obsessed with the possibility of another terror attack.
Oh, you mean terrorist? Terror is called
terror attack. Yeah. Like any potential threat to national security, and basically like at least the way that the movie portrays it is like he bypassed like the entire chain of command. Like he wants to know directly anytime there's any alert whatsoever, and then he just became kind of consumed by paranoia. But I did find that interesting because there's other research on, kind of the personality styles that are attracted to politics. So narcissism is one, unsurprisingly. But paranoia, I guess, it does link with the coalition building and the desire to find loyal allies. And it seems like, it does seem like that type of person does seem to like climb those kinds of political hierarchies.
They have like there's all of these character types usually have like a dominant like kind of dyad of an interpersonal dyad, like a self-other dyad that is really dominant for them. And so it's always like something with narcissism, depressive personality, whatever it is. It's like there's always this dyad. And with paranoia, it's really there's really like a weak, disempowered, often humiliated, vulnerable, powerless, confused person. It really feels like a childlike person. And then there's the monstrous, psychopathic, sadistic other who is really psychologically impenetrable and unfathomable. Why would they even do this? We can't even understand. They're motivated by an evil that doesn't even they're so, but neither one of these are really like very nuanced characters.
Right.
They're all pretty hollow, not very realistic, but there's this real extreme disparity between the two parties of like the pure but confused and totally powerless person, and then this like also unfathomable, like powerful, monstrous person. And I think like I do think you do see that a lot in politics, where I don't think it's just a rhetorical thing. I think they often really do perceive their enemies as like unfathomably evil and can't understand why they do anything, and lose touch with the ability to like represent this as like two complicated people with different motivations that are working towards goals or something. You just almost never really hear that.
Right. Yeah.
I pulled up this quote here. So this is sort of related to the politics point, where McWilliams writes that the main way in which paranoid people try to enhance their self-esteem is through exerting effective power against authorities and other people of importance. Experiences and vindications of triumph give them a relieving, although fleeting, sense of both safety and moral rectitude. And so I wonder if politics attracts these types because, if you're a paranoid person, how do you achieve safety? Well, maybe by acquiring power yourself. So get into politics, get elected, and now you have this political power. And then maybe, you imagine that you will subsequently achieve some sense of safety. But it probably just gets worse from there, because now you have a big target on your back.
Right. Now you really should be paranoid. Yeah, they are out to
Yeah.
get you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I think they're formative, like childhood experiences. Like, I mean, I had a teacher who said that the thing that really makes people paranoid is when they're kind of like hurt or attacked or insulted, and then the parent says that didn't happen.
Gaslighting.
Wow.
It's like, it's that kind of like, so you hurt somebody or you insult them or that something, and then they say that didn't happen. And then they kind of have the anger and pain from that experience, but they can't like connect it to the real source, and they start looking for alternative sources that it like attaches to. So, but that is like that's like the foundational thing. I don't know if they'd like dream about that, but something about being abused and then lied to about it, to the point where, especially when you're a kid, where you might actually believe them, and then
sure.
and then you're really confused. You don't even, there's a kind of like a I don't trust my own mind.
Well, yeah, I have that all the time. Or no, of course, it's like, did I make this up, or like I often have that thing where I can't remember if I said something or I just thought it. Like, I had this like very unkind sentiment, like 20 years ago that just somehow imprinted on my memory, and I'm like, did I actually say that out loud at some point, or did I just think it? It's really weird.
Yeah.
Do you worry that like you've said that to someone else, or did you just think that about them? Is that the concern?
Yeah, or just did I say like, or just something cringe, if it's something cringe, like did I say it to somebody in a conversation, or did I say it, or like did I just think, like I often think like, oh, I just had this thought, and if I said it, it would be like terrible, but it's in my brain now, so I don't know.
It's like, I love Nickelback.
Yeah, exactly.
They're my
I would
favorite band.
never say or think that, but No, I don't know. Or just I have a hard like as a writer, as somebody who writes about herself, I sometimes don't remember if I wrote
Yeah.
it or if it actually happened. This gets very mixed up.
I mean, I don't. This is like for me the thing I don't feel like my brain really ever fully came out of COVID. I still feel like I don't have. And I think a big part of it is I'm always on Zoom. I'm always on these Zoom meetings, which I do not think is good for people. But it's like that's my whole day is like Zoom meetings.
Oh
But like
gosh.
I just like it's Zoom meetings and laptop and like I'm on screen all the time. And yeah, I don't think and working from home, I don't think it's good for
No.
people. Like so, but I feel like I didn't have that as much. But since COVID, I think like, and there's been these like really, it seems like really broad cognitive declines in everyone. But the way that I feel that's experienced usually is just like a fogginess and like if people are aware of it at all, maybe they experience it as like a fogginess or like a lack of memory or something. Like
Oh, sure.
I would talk to kids who were like during COVID and they were just spent the whole day on screens and be like, well, they'd said nothing, I didn't do anything. Like, well, what'd you do? They were on screens. Well, what'd you watch? And they'd be like, I don't remember. And like, they didn't remember, like you could have 8 hours of a day of screens and like not remember anything about what just happened.
And it's kind of
I
like
think
we're living in a blackout. Our lives
so
are
much
blackouts. The
so much of
mind is not
memory
recording it.
Yeah.
is physical, right? Like, we aren't just computers, right? We sort of operate in the world. We evolve to sort of interact with the world, and I wonder if we don't have enough of that, like the memories just they aren't encoded properly, or not in the same way as if you have a conversation in real life or interact with the real world versus just sitting and on some level the brain doesn't categorize it as like a real event. But I have a question because I have those same tendencies, Megan, of like, oh God, did I say something and I'm thinking of like a memory from high school or something, like,
Exactly.
oh God, I can't
Yes.
believe I said
really
that.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then you start to feel like embarrassed or shameful or something, but then or ashamed. But then, do you ever have the reverse of that, where like you remember some embarrassing or cringe thing someone else did 20 years ago and like silently like laugh to yourself at how stupid they were?
Well, what's your answer?
My answer is
I know.
not no. Like I don't really
really?
have that.
No,
I don't
I'm too busy
really.
thinking about myself. No, I don't either.
No.
'Cause I
No.
don't-
And so it's funny that we have this. Like, I wonder, like, what the purpose of this is, of, like, every once in a while, our brain delivering us these cringe moments from our own past, and then we, like, feel bad about it. But we don't get the I guess, the reward of the opposite of that, of, like, our brain delivering us these fun moments from someone else's blooper reel, and
No,
then like
right.
getting a bit of pleasure from it. I never get that. Like I don't even remember what happened to anyone else 20 years ago, but we only remember the horrible parts of our own lives.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I have an overactive. I mean, my self criticism is in the hyperdrive, so I will do anything to beat myself up. Like that's kind of my default. So.
Even in the moment, if I see someone embarrass themselves publicly, like in the moment, I feel like a little bit of that secondhand embarrassment or shame, like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. And then by the next day, I've already kind of forgotten about it. It's,
Well, I think thank God that's not me. Like if somebody trips or something, because like okay, that's happened to me so many times that thank God it's not me this time. Yeah.
Does this link to the paranoia thing? Is there a link
Well,
between this and the paranoia?
I still
Or is this
want
a
to
different-
know, and maybe we can have a part 2 drilling down into this, because I still want to know, like, where does paranoia stop and just hypervigilance begin?
Yeah.
And, like, because I'm paranoid that I'm not going to turn off a Zoom and I'm going to be walking around my house and it's still on. Or, like, I'm in a live stream and then I didn't hit stop and, right. And then I carried on the conversation and then it was live streaming, like, all day, and it recorded me doing whatever. But I mean, that's
Right,
not
right.
out of the realm of possibility.
There was that guy at CNN or something. had that
Jeffrey
be
Toobin.
Jeffrey
Yes,
Toobin.
you might. Yes, don't.
Oh,
I'm
man, I haven't
so
heard about that
afraid
in a
I'm going to
while.
be jerking off on another screen during
Yeah.
this conversation. For instance, it's could completely happen. Yeah,
I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah. And yeah, I really like there are so many like obsessive fears like this, and I remember I've had patients and they'll say they'll come up with things that I haven't thought of, and then I start to think about
Right.
them.
Yes,
But it's
exactly.
like
Thanks
one
a
of them was
lot.
like, what if I don't get all the dish soap off my plate, and then I end up eating dish soap, and I like get poisoned from it or something, or bleach or something, or it's like I don't. It's like, turns out a lot of this stuff is fine. You can like check it on ChatGPT. It's not really a
It wouldn't
risk,
be
but
if dish soap were that poisonous, it wouldn't.
it wouldn't be on
It wouldn't be
dishes.
approved
Yeah,
by
yeah,
the
yeah.
FDA.
But there is there's so many of them. They are. It's interesting. Those are all shame based. Like the obsessive thoughts. Like, first of all, everybody does have obsessive intrusive thoughts. Like that is something that you tell people with OCD because they think they're the only people that have them, and they're not. So that's like one of the first things that you kind of like get off the table is like, yes, everybody has weird thoughts. Like, what if I, made out with this person and it's an inappropriate thing? But if you look at what they're focused on, they're sexual, aggressive, shame, and then sometimes like blasphemy, contamination. There's a certain cluster of them, but like especially like sex aggression and shame are like the real ones. Like accidentally running somebody over in your car is like really common. Grabbing a
Oh,
knife.
I'm afraid of that.
What?
I'm terrified of hitting a pedestrian.
Yeah,
But I mean,
I have a bit
that's
of that too.
rational. That's totally rational.
But they would think, did I hit somebody and I didn't realize it?
Oh, I see.
And they'll kind of
right.
go drive around and check multiple times and be like, did I? Yeah. But they kind of do speak to like very primitive desires, and the capacity for humiliation is way bigger with the internet. Like the amount of humiliation you can get in your middle school, which is pretty bad, and then it's like a million middle schools.
Yeah.
That Andrew, that's like an OCD thing, right? Like the driving around that I hit someone in my car.
Yeah.
So is that like, do they secretly wish to have hurt someone? Is that the idea? Like the primitive desire? Like what is the primitive desire that behavior is revealing or concealing? Or
It could be. I mean, from the CBT standpoint, you don't do this. You don't think about what they mean. You're like, your brain generates a lot of crazy shit. Don't worry about it. And that's the CBT approach, which has a lot of evidence behind it. But if you're really thinking like there is a lot of aggression in these. The idea that you're angry at people and then you have a thought like this. If you look at what the most common obsessions are, sex, aggression, shame, they're all pretty primitive desires. And the idea that, yeah, you're angry and you can't like the idea that somebody with that fantasy has anger that they can't express in a mature way or has hang-ups about anger. I mean, that's very high, I think. But unpacking that probably it tends to not be very fruitful for OCD people because they just fixate on all of that again, and it just kind of stirs up all the obsessions. And
Yeah, we should do an episode, at least one, about OCD because it seems like it goes in waves for people, and I'm curious if there's a way to address it without necessarily like going into a specific treatment protocol, but that's another topic.
I think we should, because I remember I wrote this very brief, I think it was a paper or a chapter in grad school, and one of the things I pointed out, like there's a distinction between OCD and OCPD, and colloquial everyday, so there's obsessive compulsive disorder and then obsessive compulsive personality disorder, and of course they have to make it confusing on purpose. But when people in everyday life, colloquially, when people say, oh, I'm so OCD about like how I set my shoes by the door, what they mean is I'm OCPD. Like that is characteristic. like being neat essentially is like kind of an obsessive compulsive personality disorder characteristic. But OCD is something different. It's like, obsession with cleanliness and counting and other things. But like people with OCPD don't like obsessively count things.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, that could be a different.
Honestly,
that might
there
be
is
interesting.
like it's most mapped on to the chapter in here on obsessive personalities, which is
Oh,
what they're
okay.
called here.
Yeah,
Like
no, we should
is
definitely do that.
Yeah.
that's what
Maybe
it's
our
called
next one.
here. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think because I kind of feel like I have OCD symptoms going in phases sometimes.
Well,
so.
people are freaked out by the fact that the brain has. I think that of things that people are really freaked out, that your mind has all types of crazy, irrational thoughts. That you want things that are unrealistic and contradictory and crazy, and you have feelings that don't make sense and are intense. Like that's so important to like understand. I can't say how many therapies I start by talking about that in the very first session, because just to be able to talk about your crazy thoughts and feelings, you kind of have to be normalized enough to like, because people are they're so terrified about the fact that they feel and think weird things. And it's hard for the therapy to even start because people are so scared about how
You have to tell them they're a total basic.
they're so
There's
basic.
nothing new. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, this has been a great conversation. I'm sure we could go on and on, but thank you for illuminating us,
Thanks, Megan.
both of you. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
See you guys next time.
See you.